Hello everybody, this is B. Harper from supermarcy.com and welcome back to my LGBT horror reviews. So, I've decided to bite the bullet. I am going to review, or at least look at, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, aka the gay one. Now, what can I say about this movie that hasn't already been said? Nothing. So what I'm going to do is more or less correlate the some of the particulars of the movie with the theme that I'm sort of gunning for, LGBT. So, right, a little bit of backstory about this film. Originally, Wes Craven wanted A Nightmare on Elm Street to be a standalone movie. But New Line Cinema, being the hungry hippo it was, wanted to make it a franchise. So, bearing the success of the first film in mind, they put number 2 into production. Wes Craven didn't have much, if nothing, to do with it. So they employed a brand new bunch of folks, and thankfully brought back Robert Englund. Now, although his name escapes me, and I do apologise, I'm a very terrible movie reviewer, but the screenwriter of Nightmare on Elm Street 2 said specifically that he wanted to tackle the film from a much different and far more intimate angle. And this angle is the subconscious, or specifically, the fear of oneself. You see, in the film, Jesse finds himself haunted and possessed by Freddy Krueger. Because what Freddy Krueger wants is that he just wants to be born into the real world. So he's chosen Jesse as his vassal, his avatar, if you will. Mark Patton plays Jesse, and although straight out the gate, Nightmare on Elm Street 2 isn't my favourite of the franchise, it's pretty much in the lower rungs in terms of quality. But I gotta applaud this film on its bravado and audacity by casting the male lead as the victim. Essentially, Jesse is the scream queen. He is the damsel in distress, and that right there turns one of the many tropes in horror, on its head. Like, usually it's the woman who's being victimized. It's usually the woman who's being chased, and it's usually the woman who ends up being the prize for the hero. Well, here's the thing. Jesse is the victim. He fights as hard as he possibly can against Freddy's will. He tries everything he possibly can to, hold Freddy back and try to restrain him, but in the end, it doesn't work. Jesse gives in to Freddy, and Freddy comes into the real world. And Freddy is virtually unstoppable. So, Jesse's girlfriend, Lisa, played by Kim Myers, who happens to look like Meryl Streep, she ends up kissing Freddy. And it is this kiss, a kiss of love, an action of purity, of innocence, that banishes Freddy and brings Jesse back. Now, I've heard criticism that this sort of this kiss sequence is like saying kissing away the gay or praying away the gay, but I don't necessarily think that's the case. What Freddy represents in this film is the common uncertainty that, folks who are living in the closet feel every day. They are feeling that they will be stigmatized, they will be chased out of town, they will be hunted down, all manner of terrible things. And this is something, unfortunately, that society has done. It has said, what is natural and what is abnormal. So Freddy represents that self-hatred, self-loathing and denial. And when he takes over Jesse, who's like trying to figure out who he is, that is the pressure of society coming through and dominating yet another person. But when Lisa kisses him, that makes Jesse come back to us. He basically comes back into the world and he feels perhaps a little more secure. I like what Mark Patton said in response to, you know, what would happen after A Nightmare on Elm Street 2. He probably said, you know, perhaps he and Lisa probably weren't going to be boyfriend and girlfriend anymore, but they're just going to be really good friends because Lisa helped him out. Lisa saved him in his time of need. So, yeah, in saying that, going back to the screenplay, there really is nothing more horrifying to you than, you know, being uncertain of yourself, not being sure about what is lurking in your mind, and just listening to all these voices of doubt and pain and hatred. Because again, a lot of this stigma comes from what society has put on homosexuality. Whether you're gay, lesbian, bi, transsexual, whatever your orientation or the way you live your life, society tries to find a way to dictate it to you. And if you don't abide by that, you know, you get thrown to the wolves, you get abandoned. So, yeah, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 is definitely very, very brave in tackling that sort of issue pretty much head on. No pun intended. What I find really hilarious, though, is that in Never Sleep Again, the excellent documentary on the Nightmare on Elm Street legacy, the filmmakers say they had no idea what they were doing was homoerotic. And there are so many references in the film, like, even if you discount Freddy and his relationship to Jesse and his subconscious, there was so much gay in this movie. So it's hilarious to me that these people had no clue, but those who watched the movie are picking up on the message just like that. It's really quite funny. And it also, in the same documentary, to hear the cast discuss what they saw in the screenplay, or rather what they didn't see, it just makes me think, are they actually playing a joke on us? Are they actually making us think for ourselves, what this film is trying to say? Yeah, I know, I'm easily amused, but I just find it very, very funny. But look, overall, as a movie, as a general film, Nightmare on Elm Street 2 isn't as good as it could have been. It has 3 very good leads, and Mark Patton, Robert Russler, and Ken Myers, and it's got some astounding visual effects. Some may argue a couple of them don't hold up as well as they do today, but considering the ingenuity and the hours put into making these things, you can see that hard work paying off. But what's a shame about the movie is that while it tries to expand on the Nightmare on Elm Street mythos, if you will, it also tends to sort of limit itself by making some kind of bad decisions. One of these decisions being that, Freddy Krueger is the master of the dreamscape. When you are in his domain, you are his. And he will hunt you down like a bloodhound. But in reality, when you think about it, Robert Englund isn't a very sort of big guy. He's a sort of an average height, 5'8" dude, rather skinny. And when you see him as Freddy Krueger at the pool party in the real world, he just doesn't cut a threatening figure. And because of that, the film loses more of its substantial impact. Because while Freddy is having his way inside Jesse's body, I completely walked into that, he can do whatever he wants. He can manipulate Jesse any which way in order to sort of make his plan a reality. But as soon as he manifests himself in the real world, he loses his impact. All of that sort of undercurrents in his relationship with Jesse is pretty much lost. And that's a real shame, because once something has been committed to the screen, you are going to remember it. Now, God forbid, so to speak, if they decide to remake A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, I'm not quite certain how that would pan out. Well, one thing is that in the film, it actually deals with homosexuality in a or rather the insinuation of homosexuality in a very sort of mature and surprisingly touching way. The way the Robert Russell and Mark Patton play it it's incredibly sensitive. No, they're not a romantic couple, but you can sort of sense that sort of tension lying underneath it. And to see that in a film made in the 1980s, like when AIDS was starting to become like a huge, panic, when people didn't necessarily know what it was, to see something like that being portrayed with maturity was a rarity. Of course, you had dramas like Philadelphia, but that's a different kettle of fish altogether. But Nightmare on Elm Street 2 remains one of the most prominent LGBT horror films, and also I think the Nightmare series is the only film that boasts a film about homosexuality. I can't think of any other sort of a big time franchise that is able to say, you know what, we have a movie devoted to gayness. So in closing, as a film, Nightmare on Elm Street 2 to me is about 2.5. But in terms of its relevance to, gay, lesbian, transsexual and bisexual cinema, it's one of the better horror films that manages to make something like that mainstream. So yes, that was my ramble on A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, and hopefully I shall see you again with more LGBT horror related goodness. See you later.